find a weakness. If he can find one, it could explain why 2 planes were ripped from the sky. But once again, he comes up empty.
That unit passed all its operational tests. There wasn't any indication that it had failed, and it operated within the parameters we expected it to.
It's been almost 2 years since the crash of Flight 427, and the investigation has stalled. Now, 2 737s have gone down in startlingly similar ways, and investigators still don't know why.
We were all frustrated as months wore into years. What were we missing?
It definitely took a toll in their personal lives. They worked incredibly long hours. They never stopped thinking about it.
We were going up against an aircraft that had an incredible safety history. It was really everything you could see for 30 years. This has been a great airplane. We were trying to prove that there was something wrong with the straight-A student.
It clearly was on his mind. He at one point had a nightmare about it where he dreamed that he was in front of a congressional committee that was grilling him on now there had been a 3rd 737 crash, and in Tom's dream all of the cameras were pointing to him, and a congressman asked, "Why didn't you ground the fleet?"
Unsure of where to look next, and with the trail of evidence getting colder, investigators need help. On June 9th, 1996, they finally get the break they've been looking for.
East Wing 517, you're clear for landing.
By the summer of 1996, the crashes of United Airlines Flight 585 and US Air Flight 427 are still unsolved. With the odds of another crash increasing daily, Tom Howder and his team are desperate for a break in the case. On June 9th, 1996,
East Wing 517, you're clear for landing.
They finally get one. Captain Brian Bishop is on final approach to Richmond, Virginia, when without warning, his east wind jet rolls sharply to the right.
We didn't know to what extent, but we knew we had a problem with the rudder. I turned the yoke the opposite direction, stood on the opposite rudder pedal. The pedal didn't move for me.
For over 30 seconds, the 737 flies in a precarious right bank as Bishop fights to keep it from rolling over. Then suddenly, the unknown forces holding the jet let go, snapping the wings back to horizontal.
In a matter of seconds, it released itself and went back to normal. We had started the checklist. Almost before I could finish the sentence, all of a sudden there was just a wham.
For a second time, the 737 is pushed on its side. For a harrowing half minute, the 737 takes on a life of its own. Then, once again, as quickly as it began, the rollover stops.
After the second time, I looked at the first officer and I said, "Declare an emergency."
Tell the controller we have flight control problems.
And now, as they slow down to land, the risks are increasing. If a third rollover occurs, they won't have enough airspeed to recover.
I did at some point tell my first officer to look out the window and find a dark spot. It was nighttime and we were looking to avoid a neighborhood or a populated area. And he very calmly responded that, "Hey, here's a spot over here."
But there is no third event. Bishop brings Flight 517 in high and fast and lands safely. Within hours, news of the East Wind event reaches the NTSB, and immediately the 427 investigation team rushes to Richmond.
Flight data recorded it was undamaged, an airplane undamaged. We launched to the scene. The airplane literally didn't move, stayed at its location in the airport until we got down there.
There were a lot of FAA, a lot of NTSB, and they all wanted to talk to us very badly.
It gave the NTSB a tremendous break because suddenly they had a 737 that had had a rudder incident that was intact, and they had a pilot who was alive and who could talk about it.
I think they were much happier to have the airplane than me. I think the airplane probably gave them more to research than I ever could.
NTSB investigators quickly determined that what happened on board East Wind Flight 517 is alarmingly similar to events on Flights 427 and 585. If they can discover why Bishop's 737 rolled over, they may be able to crack two mysterious and fatal accidents.
And when we said, well, what happened? They said, there was something wrong with the rudder pedal. The pedal wouldn't go down. I was standing on the rudder pedal and I couldn't get it to go down. My God.
With Bishop's indispensable first-person testimony, investigators immediately zero in on East Wind's rudder controls. The power control unit is removed, inspected, and then tested again and again. To the frustration of everyone, the unit performs perfectly.
We tested that aircraft as is. It was intact. We went through it completely. We did flight tests with it, and it passed all tests.
After a 5-year hunt for clues, a third mysterious rudder event on a 737, and a live pilot as a witness, he decides to push his chief suspect, Flight 427's rudder controls, a little harder.
One fellow mentioned a test they had done in the military of a thermal shock, where if you had the actuator being very cold and put in very hot hydraulic fluid, it would cause it to react in strange ways. So we put together a thermal shock test, and this test was extreme to say the least.
On August 26, 1996, in Valencia, California, NTSB investigators gather to watch the torture test of U.S. Air 427's PCU. After soaking it in dry ice, the PCU is blasted with nitrogen gas to simulate the -40-degree temperatures at 10,000 meters. Then, it's quickly injected with hydraulic fluid, superheated to 77 degrees Celsius, and given the command to start working.
As we were standing there listening to the actuator move left and right, it stopped. And it was not commanded to stop.
It just jammed. It stopped working completely. Take a look.
Systems investigator Greg Phillips now asks that the valve be taken apart and scanned for scratches. They find none.
Look at that. Doesn't leave a trace.
It is a crucial breakthrough to solving an almost perfect crime. Not only have they proven that the valve which controls the rudders can jam, no evidence is left behind. It's an ominous discovery, but incredibly, there's another shocking surprise in store for the investigators. October 15th, 1996. For the last 5 years, the National Transportation Safety Board has been struggling to crack its toughest case. Two completely separate, but seemingly linked accidents. The crash of United 585 killed 25 passengers and crew. 3 years later, the U.S. Air Flight 427 disaster took another 132 lives.